You're listening to Starter Set Season 2, Episode 6. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate you. Listen, before we jump into the show, I just want to remind you to check us out on YouTube. There's a link to that in the description of this episode. And we got a lot of Lorcana Into the Inkland stuff. We got a lot of Star Wars Unlimited content going on over there on YouTube. Reviews, deck building guides, box openings, all sorts of stuff. You don't want to miss out on it. So grab the link, head over to YouTube, subscribe to us over there so you can catch all the content that's going on there. Well, that's enough for me. Let's go ahead and get into the show. Hello, and welcome to the Starter Set, where we chat about card games. A couple of guys shuffling together here in the studio today. My name's Mark, and I'm with Ian and Gibby today. What's going on, dudes? Ian, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing pretty good. It was a card game filled weekend. Actually, I played cards in a card shop for 4 days straight.
Oh my gosh.
Now, of course, I went home in between sessions.
No, he
course.
didn't.
No, he didn't. He's lying.
If they had the option, to stay over, I would have.
There was a tenting section in the back of the shop.
That's right. It's like a music festival. You know, you set up the tents and
it's alarming. It's actually not unlike what a board game convention is. I've been to one, and I will tell you this: there's some dudes who do not go back to their hotel room, just to poop, and that's it. They live off energy drinks.
Sleeping bag is just one big card sleeve.
I did drink a lot of coffee. No energy drinks here. I don't do energy drinks, but lots of coffee. Yeah. So, we had the pre-release event that I ran at my local store.
Oh yeah.
So we did that for Lorcana's Into the Inklands expansion on Friday. And then on Saturday, my girlfriend Lindsay and I went to another store, a different store that was doing a draft event. So we drafted, and then on Sunday we went back to my home store, Unplugged, for my Richmond, Virginia locals. Definitely check out Unplugged. I will bump them whenever possible because they're just great people, and it's a great. It's actually more like a board game cafe, but of course they do run card game leagues for Pokemon and Lorcana. So went back there for our standard league, constructed open play, and so everybody's testing new cards, playing with what they pulled. Super fun. And then last night, so Monday, was Pokemon, and we played GLC. So
wow.
It was
4 nights in a row.
4 nights in a row.
Nice.
Of card games, and I couldn't be happier. It was a fantastic weekend.
That's awesome. That's great. Gibby, how about you, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, first of all. My weekend was also very card filled, but slightly less card filled. I got to do probably the most card playing I have in quite a long time for one weekend, and I'm still jealous that I didn't get to do as much as Ian and Lindsay. But I competed in similar Into the Inklands. We've been talking about it ad nauseum. Event on Friday that was you get a bunch of packs and then you have to build a 60 card deck or 40 card deck. Did pretty well in that and went 2-1. And then I competed in a Saturday event where you get both starter decks and a couple extra packs, and you have to build your 60 card two color deck. And I topped that event. Was the only one to go 4-0.
Nice. Congrats.
In my event, they ran an 11 a.m. and a 4 p.m. I played in the 11. And I was the only one to go 4-0. And it was satisfying because it was that moment where I felt Ian and I's training kick in, where I looked at the card pool and my color combinations, and I said, everyone's going to do this, but this is the sauce. This is the secret sauce. And I bucked the system, and I went with the secret sauce, and it was by far the right choice. So I was very happy with that. But had a great weekend playing cards leading up to that. I've been really having fun with the Inklands release. And playing some Fights in Tight Spaces too. Can't forget about that.
Nice. Very nice. Well, I had a card game weekend too, but mine was because I went to my local game shop, which isn't really a card game shop. It's like a model train shop. But they do sell some card game stuff there. And I leaned in and turned on my Gibby magic to sweet talk the lady working behind the counter, into selling me a couple of boxes of Star Wars Unlimited. The pre-release kit, sold me 2 of them. They had a box like 5 and left in it, and because her husband, who's like her dad owns a store or whatever, so related, he bought one. And so like I think I got 2 of the last 5 that they had in store, and got to come home with them. And then I shot 22 videos for it that are going to be starting to come out. So like if you're listening to this episode, head over to, if you're interested in that Star Wars stuff, head over to our YouTube channel. Quick plug for that, because I'm going to have a video coming out every day for probably the next 3 to 4 weeks. Once I get product in and I'm doing cracking packs and stuff, that'll all be over there on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in that game, I'm going to do a breakdown. I'm going to do tons of card reviews. I talk about every single card in the first set over the course of a bunch of days. And so, yeah, check that out.
Yeah, and while we're plugging the YouTube, Gibby and I did a bunch of pre-Inklands videos, and we're going to be doing some post-release videos here coming up soon as well. So if you're into Lorcana, you can check that out. And then our beloved listener / now basically teammate Curry is also doing some Pokemon content. So if you're interested in the Pokemon TCG, be sure to check that stuff out. He had a very cool gameplay video featuring one of the decks that I personally believe will be a top pick post rotation in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know if even Curry shares that sentiments, but that's what I believe.
That's a strong plug.
Yeah. Anyways,
listen, I got a little news that it's a little TCG news, and then we are going to get to the question today. But
I was going to say we're doing banter for the first time. You know,
well,
I think we stumbled into it by accident.
We stumbled into it, but it was like, listen, there's a ton of card game stuff. Like you have a Pokemon set coming out, Lorcana set coming out, Star Wars starting up, like lots of stuff going on.
The most relevant banter we've had.
But this is genuine card game news. So a little card game news segment. TCG Player came out and they announced like the 5 top grossing card games. And they called them the Big 5. The Big 5. They're the ones kind of been like situated themselves in that in terms of, I think it's just in January, of like cards that are bought on their platform or whatever. And so those Big 5 are Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Lorcana, in One Piece. So Lorcana has made its way into like the top 5 card games, and I didn't know it was going to do it. I'm impressed.
It does not surprise me in the least. This game is really popular.
People are frothing at the mouth for this stuff, man. They can't get enough of it. Like rabies guys out there.
I'm a seller on TCG Player. The only thing I sell is the enchantments that I pull. They are far and few between, I understand. But I did a good job. I did a good job in Hey, look, for anybody who's interested, my luck does have its limitations. I have more enchanteds from Inklands than I do legendaries.
Which is,
that
cannot be true at this point.
I swear on everything that it is true. I swear on my luck, on my horseshoe that is somewhere inside of my body.
That's probably the most important thing Gibby could swear on.
It's all I've got. It's literally all I've got. No, I've pulled across.
That's what this is.
Across, if we're gonna count packs, it's almost 2.5 boxes at this point.
Okay.
So probably 35, 40-ish packs somewhere in there.
And one of your boxes had no legendaries. Right?
Dude, both of them
you can report that.
Neither of them did.
Neither of them had
neither
legendaries?
Of them did.
I think you can report that to Ravensburger. They're doing like a reporting system. There may be some sort of compensation you can go through. They, I guess, had some production issues around rarity distribution, stuff like that, for a lot of things in the set. This is not a Lorcana podcast, so I don't want to get too far into it, but this is a discussion that probably needs to be had by Gibby and I on the YouTube sometime, which is that like
it will.
This is the second out of 3 releases that went poorly. I think, and one could argue the second release, while managed much better on the whole, still wasn't perfect. And so, despite the ravenous appetite for the game, the player base is going to be frustrated, no doubt. Yeah. Because this is another thing Gibby and I probably will talk about at some point, but Ravensburg is not doing a whole lot in terms of promo cards or special, box releases or anything. And so the price of singles is really high because the only way to get certain high value cards is by pulling it, as comparison to Magic and Pokemon, which have, promo, boxes. Oh, you can get the Miraidon League Battle box. And okay, that drives the price of Miraidons down because now regular Joe can go into Walmart and guarantee that he gets it. Things like that. And that's what keeps singles prices low. And there's nothing like that on the market for Lorcana right now. And that's why you've got these $50 chase rares. And we're getting to the point where it's like it's expensive. And I am not too proud to admit that I just dropped like about $60 on some legendaries at a card shop when I realized, oh wow, Jim Hawkins is half the price it is online. I'm gonna buy 3 of them for $18 a pop. And I have to do it because I know the price won't come down. If anything, it's gonna go up. It's sitting at 35 right now, and that's probably gonna go up from there. So it's like it's a steal, but also there's no Pokemon card there's no minimum rarity Pokemon card that is more than like $10.
Yeah.
Not one. And there's like most of the legendaries are like creeping up in price. So it's I hate to criticize Lorcana because it's such a great game, but like Ravensburger needs to get their act together. It was another weird release, and I'm sorry you got hit by the production error bug, Gibby.
I did, yeah. Both of my pre-ordered boxes didn't do me too well outside of the Enchanted. I can't be too
well.
mad,
You can flip those at least.
Yeah,
and you'll want to do it soon. The price is already coming down.
I'm working on it.
Well, listen, this brings us to our question for the week, which is a really great point because, you're getting in on Lorcana on the ground floor. I'm getting in on Star Wars Unlimited on the ground floor. And, there's always these precious cards that come out in the first set or two of the card game, right? Magic the Gathering's Black Lotus, the Shadowless Charizard, right? And so my question for you guys is, if you could pick one game out of all the card games that you've known about, and they could be digital or physical, that you wish you could have been there on the ground floor for day one, downloaded it, bought it, whatever, and you would still be playing it today, what is the card game that you would pick? I certainly have an answer for this. I'm guessing you guys probably have one too. Ian, do you have a card game that if you were on the ground level of it, man, you wish you were just there on day one?
Yes, but first I want to say that for the most part, I've been on the ground floor of almost every card game I've played.
Jumped in right when it was coming out. Yeah,
I literally Yu-Gi-Oh! I had played in the golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon. I just went through and sleeved and cased a bunch of my, base set, base 2, and jungle cards. We're at the ground floor of Lorcana, Star Wars, new 5R. I don't really want to be on the ground floor of Magic or old 5R, even though I liked old 5R. But it's Legend of the Five Rings, but we called it old 5R because there was a other version. So like I've actually, and Versus System, ground floor Versus System, which was still my favorite card game, mostly from a nostalgia perspective, but it was also just a kick-ass game. So I'm forced to kind of think about like digital card games because for the most part, like I did it. I have been fortunate enough to be there, and I think I'm just gonna have to say Elder Scrolls Legends. Because although I was a content creator and I casted the Master Series and did all this cool stuff with it, I technically did not start in that game until the 3rd set was out. So I didn't play that game until because I believe the first set was base, and then it was Skyrim, and then it was the Tribune, the one with Tribunal and all that stuff.
Yeah, Morrowind stuff.
The Morrowind stuff. So that's when I kind of came into the game, and I had to play catch up, and I never did finish my collection of Tessel, despite all of that game, all those game hours. I never finished the collection, so probably that.
Yeah, no, that's a good choice. How about you, Gibby? Do you have a game that you look back, man, I kind of wish I could have been on the ground level of that one,
Yeah, for me, it actually is also the same, Elder Scrolls Legends, but for a completely different reason. I never get to play it at all. and it
Okay.
was because I didn't know the game existed, and I didn't really have something that was drawing me into the game. I didn't have the connection that I do with you two. Now, for that same reason, I used to watch some of Ian's content when his on his channel when he was content creating for Elder Scrolls Legends way back in the day, on the very beginnings of Legends Cast, and I don't think I fully. There have been several games where Ian's brought it to me, and I've been like, yeah, maybe I'll check it out. Like hesitant, but like didn't really have. Not that I didn't have faith in Ian, but I didn't have faith that I was gonna like really enjoy the game. Like I really wasn't. I don't know, sold. Like it was gonna be as impactful for me. And then I played the game. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like that's how I got into LOR in the first place too. And I wish, because I hear you guys talk about that game so highly and in its heyday, how all of the things that game did right from a card game perspective. And I would have loved to have experienced it for myself. Because every new card game that you play makes you a better card game player. And I think that's valuable. And I wish that I wish I had been on the train.
Yeah.
What's crazy is that Gibby would have loved Tessel. Me,
I think you
especially
would've.
me. So Gibby and I became friends in college through Ultimate Frisbee, but bonded early on through Rocket League and Hearthstone. And that was Gibby's first like kind of traditional like collectible card game, if I'm correct, right, Gibby? You just collected Pokemon cards just for fun. You didn't play the game or anything, right?
Yes, I revisited playing the game when I was like in high school with my friend for like a couple weeks, and then that was it.
You have a torrid history with the Pokemon game part, right? I know. But what's crazy is that like me now having played multiple card games with Gibby at varying levels, I now know what makes Gibby tick and what he likes in card games, and it's everything that Tessel was, which is incredible amount of deck building potential. Like there's just, it felt like you could play rogue decks and compete at the highest level. And it was just one of those things where deck creation, where there were so many options, there was so much like intricacy and like how you constructed your decks. There were great combo things, but you have to figure out how to build around them, and there was never really that while there were meta decks, there was never really, one established way to play any of the meta decks, right? It just, Gibby would have thrived in that game. So it's just, that's a bummer.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, for me, if I had to pick one that I'd like to be on the ground level, I'm going to go this is a little dark horse. I'm going to pick a living card game. I wish I had been on the ground level of Lord of the Rings, the living card game by Fantasy Flight. I wish
the cooperative
one.
Oh, yes,
that has
dude.
There's a competitive thing that you can do with it.
Yeah, there
but
is.
I think for me, the thing, like I own the base set, I've never really even played it. And I think for me, the thing that's so hesitant is like there's so many Grail expansions in that now that have been out of print and you can't find them. And I would really love to own them. They're super expensive. And actually buying the base box, getting disappointed about not being able to track down some of the first expansions is what made me get in at Marvel Champions at the ground level and has made me, even though I'm not always playing it, buy everything that comes out for it. Because I like living card games and the fact that you can own everything. I like that they build on one another. And I just wish I had downstairs this massive 10, 15,000 card collection of everything that came out from Fantasy Flight for Lord of the Rings. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, and speaking from the perspective of somebody whose father owns not all of it, but a lot of it, man, is that game so good. The deck building is so fun, and it's very challenging. And more than that, I think the artwork is just incredible. Just feels very Tolkien,
Tolkien, and not all movies either. Like it doesn't.
It is very artistic,
own,
drawn.
Unique. Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
Really good.
Well, listen, guys, we are covering our last episode tonight on Fights in Tight Spaces. If you guys have not yet played this game, I encourage you to go and check it out. You can grab it on Steam. You can grab it on the Nintendo Switch as well. And we have been talking about it for the past couple of weeks. We've been pretty hyped about it. So I have to ask, what are your guys' weeks in Fight in Tight Spaces? What have they looked like? If you had a chance to get any runs in with all of the other card game madness, all the physical card game madness in our lives over this last week. Gibby, how about you? Have you had a chance to get any runs in of Fights in Tight Spaces?
I did have some fights, and the walls were not far apart. So I did. I did get to play a couple more runs this week in between the prep for the weekend. Ironically, though, I feel like I hit a skill plateau in fights in tight spaces. Like I had that one magical run that I got all the way through on was a classic difficulty, and I was unable to repeat it. I was like, I got this, and I even got so bold as to go do a run one level above classic, and then was immediately humbled as I lost like in the first round, like in the first fight or two, and I was like, okay, back to where we should be living. And I stayed in classic for the rest of the time. I never felt like I still won. Was never tempted or felt like I needed the rollbacks to go. Was a classic plus, which is like the in between between Suave and classic. I never felt like I needed that. I was okay failing, so I stayed in classic. But I played more of the aggressive deck. I think I went back and I also like the balance deck that you get kind of early on.
The first
I still
deck.
thought that I still thought that had a similar enough playstyle that I really liked it. And I think I unlocked all but the DLC fighting style deck. So
no, you
I
would have had
gave them all once.
You would have had the gunplay one, which is the DLC one, which you wouldn't have had as the trickster. That's the last one you unlock.
Right. So that's the one that I didn't buy the DLC, so I didn't get that one.
Okay, so what you're saying is you unlocked all the unlockable decks, you just don't have the gun deck, the one
Correct.
for the DLC. Yeah, okay,
Yes.
so very cool, very cool.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I will say this, Gibby, I totally agree with you. There is a very real, I mean, it is not a game that you can play lightly. I've gotten my butt kicked in many a runs in this game, and it's not super casual. It reminds me so much of the level of intensity and focus that Wild Frost has required of me. That it's like it feels a little bit like some mental gymnastics as you're working your way through a game. You kind of get done and you're like, oh, I just studied for a math test. Yeah, for sure. Ian, did you get any fights in tight spaces in this week?
I did, which honestly should be a testament to the game and how much I've enjoyed it, because realistically speaking, with how much I played other card games, the fact that I got home on Saturday evening, and as I was getting ready for bed, I was like, oh, I didn't finish that like segment. You know what? I'm gonna put myself to bed with fights in tight spaces, and I grabbed my Switch and played it for a little bit until I got too sleepy. So, and then I picked it up again today and did another. I tried to do another 2 runs. I failed both. I learned that I really don't like the stabby deck with the bleed effects. I really don't care for that. And I also learned some big lessons around trying to jump up in difficulty, because like Gibby, I too was humbled. I also have not tried the trickster deck. I have not gotten that one unlocked yet. I did get to play some with the grappling effects. Those are extremely fun. You know, stunning people, throwing them for the round. I also really love
the suplex card though is so
the animation
fun.
is so cool.
Super sick.
Yes, it is. It's great.
I like the choke slam.
That's
the choke slam
too.
is pretty sick.
Did you get any of the ones that like you have like spiked boots, and if you have a guy who's down, you can just stomp on them?
No, I didn't get that.
Yeah,
That's
so
sick.
it stays in your hand. So if you draw it, it won't ever leave your hand, and it doesn't count towards your hand size. And when you get someone on the ground, it's 1 momentum, and it deals 8 bleed to a downed unit.
Oh
next
my
to you.
gosh!
And so I had crazy. 2 of them. I had 2 of them, so I would down somebody and then stomp them for 16 bleed and then run away from them. That was how I won the one game I did with Grapple, which is super fun. Like it was a super fun way to play. Yeah.
Well, I've just been loving that setup for being able to like not just push people backwards and out of the map, which was the first run I did, which was really, really fun, which was all of the like, hey, push people out of bounds. That was fun. But instead, the shifting them left and right or switching places with them or whatever, and just doing as many of the things I can to get them hit each other, you know, is just super fun. That's the most satisfying part of the game, I think. And then also, I think having now played all of them except for the trickster one, which I'm excited to check out. I still think that the gunplay one is my favorite. I think they really knocked out of the park with the DLC deck, and that the way that it feels both balanced but so different from everything else. Like, it doesn't feel necessarily stronger than everything else. It just feels like a different way to play the game, which it's like that's what you want from a DLC pack.
Mhm.
Well, I'll certainly be checking. I'm gonna wait for that one to come out, maybe be cheaper a little bit,
Yeah,
because
me
I
too.
didn't buy it in the package, but I'm gonna buy it when it does come out. For me, I played a couple of games and I tried to take a lesson from Gibby, and I was like, okay, I've beaten 2 runs. I've done it with Slasher, and I loved Slasher. That one was just like all avoiding people and bleeding people the whole time.
I
did it with
hate that. I want to knock him
well,
out right away.
I enjoyed that.
Push him
force.
off the map, push him off a ledge. That's what I want.
I had no money the whole run because I never
Gotcha.
hit any extra objectives, but I did finish it.
Yeah, it
the
takes
other
so
one-
long.
It does. It
All
it
of your
took me so
ambassadors
long.
will die.
They all did. Yeah, I let them all die.
But the
And-
briefcase, Mark. The briefcase.
Come on,
yeah,
briefcase.
listen, they were all cannon fodder for me not taking damage. And then I won one with grapplers. I was like, I'm gonna do aggression, and I even did it like on the easier setting. Man, I don't know how you guys play aggression. I just I make mistakes. I die so quick.
Aggressively.
Evidently aggressively. I'm like, man, I just can't get this deck. It is fun. Like the wall jump, there's a ton. I think the really unique thing about the aggressive deck is there's a lot of places where positioning matters quite a bit in terms of not necessarily where you have them, but where you are in connection to them that will allow you to like knock them back or deal extra damage to them or smash them against a wall or jump off the wall
Mhm.
yourself. And that is fun. It's just like it is more complex and harder to do the further you get in and the more enemies that are on the board. And it's sometimes especially the tighter it is. Like when you're in the little prison van and there's just nowhere,
Yeah.
at least with the grappler, like you could do the swap and like, okay, I'm in the corner, everyone's targeting me. I'm going to swap with you and everyone's punching you instead of me. And like, I had a little bit of an easier time with that, but yeah, I didn't have any finished runs this week. I really only got on, honestly, if I'm honest, like I'm playing on the Steam Deck. My Steam Deck has basically been a mobile version of Hades for the past like week. I've just gotten
Great
so
game.
hooked on that game. It is
So
really
good.
good. But I am getting to the point right now where I'm getting frustrated with it because I keep getting with the sword the whole way to Hades and losing. And so
Yeah.
I'm starting to
feel
get
that.
to the point, yes, where
Losing
I'm
to
like,
Hades.
okay, yep, I'm ready to do something else. And I'll definitely be back to fights in tight spaces because that's I would say this, the only downside for me continues to be is that it is really long to sit down and play a full run without, losing prematurely. Like if you're going the whole way through, it's really, really long. It is like mental gymnastics, so it's not just for the faint of heart. Like you gotta be focused. And then if I walk away from it, DBN, it seems like you have no problem with this. When I walk away from it and come back, I'm like, wait, where was I? Like if I
Yeah.
leave it for a day and I come back the next day, I don't remember any of the cards in my deck. I don't remember any of the strategies that I was building, and I feel lost. So it's almost like I came on a couple of times and I'm just going to give up this run and start a new one because I just don't remember where I was with this deck.
Well, I think one thing that for me at least, and this is probably so one thing I've recognized in myself, and I'll brag about myself for a second, but then tell you why it's not always a good thing, right? Is that I think I pick games up and just things, concepts up very, very quick in my life, just whatever it is. And the way I do that is by finding a niche that works for me and then really leaning into it, right? And so, I joined the Ultimate Frisbee team, and as a freshman, I'm one of the only people that actually knows how to throw a forehand at this point. Okay, lean into that. Show off my forehand to the captains every time I get and I make the team. Wonderful, right? So I think with games like this, and I noticed I did this with Fights in Tight Spaces, is that I kind of just conditioned myself to like, don't really think about what else is in the deck. Just play the hand you're given on that turn and don't worry about it. Like, and then in between, after you finish a battle and you pick a card, I just kind of go, what is the, like, it's kind of like the card game, good stuff piles, right? You make a pile of just generally good things and stop worrying about synergy and stop worrying about building a direction with your deck. And I found that, like, well, by and large, that's probably been why I can just sort of pick it up and put it down, pick it up and put it down. And maybe it's limiting my growth in the game that I have that mentality, because that's the downside to the way that I pick things up, is that oftentimes I will take the shortcuts to being as good as possible, as fast as possible, and then miss out on some of the learning that comes along with trying to do it.
And learning the game deeply, that sort of
Learning
stuff.
it right.
Growth potential.
Yeah, exactly. But I think with this, at least, that's why I'm able to just set it down, pick it back up, and just not really lose a step. But I totally understand what you mean. You did say something that interested me, though, when you were talking about the prison van. Just to rewind real quick, I started so for something like Wild Frost or Slay the Spire, when you're picking your course, right? A lot of times you're looking at what are the rewards I can get between battles or after battles. Can I go to the gym or can I go to the medical tent for this game, right? And I started realizing that's actually not always the best way to do things. Sometimes if you know your deck has a ton of push, you look at the maps and you say, oh, this is a closed off area. I don't want to go here. Oh, I've seen this map before. This is with all the balconies. I want to fight on that map. And so I started charting my course, not by whether I'd go to a med tent or a gym, unless I got the crap kicked out of me and then I'll go to a med tent, right? Or whatever it is, right? But I started looking, I started looking at, like, oh, the prison van. I'm not doing that one. I don't have any way to, like, switch places with people or to do the one where you slip past them and get behind them. Like, I will get cornered and get, like, wrecked, not going there. Or I knew that I had, when I played the gun one, and I talked about this last time, I got, like, super, super far. I would have easily, like, crushed that run. And then I took a stupid long-term disadvantage or whatever, injury, and it ruined my entire run. But I realized quickly, like, oh, that this gun thing, I want the biggest map possible every time because I have all these range attacks. I hated the small maps, so I just started manipulating, my course based on the bigger, maps or the more open ones. And I used to do the same thing actually when I was playing the grapple deck, except I would do that for the small ones. I was like, give me the smallest map because I'm downing people and then they can't get to me or they have to step on their buddy, and take damage, right? And I imagine it's probably the same if you do the defensive one where you put a bunch of block up and counterpunch, right? You probably want those small, tight spaces where they can't hit you from all four sides.
Yeah,
so anyways,
just get one or two guys punching at you, not using up your shield. Sure.
Right. And that just seemed like such a cool component to this game that makes it different from so many of the other roguelikes where the map is moot. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, every fight is
because you get really no information in other card games about what you're going to fight. Like, it's completely
most
random.
Of the time, no.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't.
Slay the Spire is completely random. You might know it's a boss or a normal minion fight, but you have no idea what those minions are going to be. And in this, you can look at how many enemies you're going to be against, what the map's going to look like. You can gather a whole bunch of information, which I don't do frequently. And that's good advice to, like, get some information on the map.
And doesn't that feel more like a secret agent? Like, picking your battles? Right,
blueprinting it out like Ocean's 11, Ocean's 13.
Yeah,
or like
it
you have a
feels
spy
cool
in there, like learning where you're gonna fight them at and stuff. Like, getting all the intel ahead of time.
Wait,
yeah.
Am I Nicolas Cage about to steal the Declaration of Independence?
I think you are.
I think you are. You didn't know that. Actually, after you beat the game 3 times, you actually just get a Nicolas Cage that you can run with. It's just He's not even like a silhouette anymore. It's just Nicolas Cage that you run through the game with. Spoiler alert.
That's the DLC we need.
Yeah.
If we talked about things that we wish last time. We talked about things that we wish the game had done different, and trying to be like fully sort of comprehensive in our analysis, even though we all seem to like it, right? And that is one thing that I felt like could have been a nice touch, is a few more character models. There's 2 in the base game, I think, and 3 in you get 1 more in the expansion, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, you get the girl in the expansion, right? And then you have like white hair or black hair guy in the base game.
Well, I think that there's at least the white hair one is wearing heels. I think that's a woman as well.
Okay. I had no idea.
I don't know.
You have the girl in the skirt. You get the girl in the skirt, right?
In the DLC?
expansion?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's my least favorite of the models. I actually like the the sort of tomboy aesthetic woman with the heels, but still with the power suit.
Yes. Okay.
I'm like,
Uh-huh.
that's my favorite of the but models. But I feel like they could have. I don't know. I'm not a game designer, but how hard could it have been to add a few more options? And that would have felt kind of cool, I think. And just some little cosmetic things like that. That like I feel like this game, and in contrast to something that we talked about before the show, I think this is a game that could have benefited from when you complete a run. You don't just get cards, but maybe you get some ways to customize the look of your agent. I think that could have been a way to elevate it.
Mhm.
But again, this game is very stripped down to the things that make it special. And I'm not necessarily advocating that they dilute that, but I
It's a
did
very
feel
simplistic view, right? It's a very,
Yeah.
very
did-
simple, minimalist game in some ways.
But I did feel this desire to wish I had, like, I don't know, somebody in a cool John Wick overcoat or something, or somebody, just a
Neo
few more.
character,
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like Neo. Yeah. Or something. I don't know. I just felt like there was some
Keanu
opportunities
Reeves.
there.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just any
I
Keanu
agree.
Reeves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good point,
I agree.
Gibby.
Well, listen, I think that we've talked a lot about this game. There isn't a tremendous amount left that we haven't. You have to get into this game. The truth is, the depth is in the game, and we
Yeah.
can't get too in the weeds in a review around the nuances of every single card, because there's a bajillion freaking cards in this
Oh,
game.
yeah.
And so, we can't even touch on that. And so I think we're ready to give our final verdict, like our thumbs up, thumbs down. Is this a game that we're going to continue? Do we think we're going to continue to play after this? And this is really, we've talked about this. There's been games that we've really liked, that we loved last year, that we said we were going to keep playing, that we didn't keep playing.
Yeah.
And so, there was only really a couple for all of us that was like a game that we explored and played. There was a game that DBN was so uninterested in, he didn't explore, and yet he still kept playing it, and that was Pokemon last year. Wait, no, did you and I do Pokemon together, or did Gibby and I do Pokemon together?
No, you and
I
I.
didn't do Pokemon, I can tell you that.
That's right. You didn't do Pokemon. DBN and I did do, or Ian and I did Pokemon. That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
I swore
Gibby,
up and down I would never get into standard. The only thing I liked was GLC, and yet here I am, with a
Grinding it.
pre-ordered box for the next set.
Trying to get like a corporate mule.
Oh,
That's
there
right.
it is.
It's me.
Well, Gibby, tell us your final verdict on Fights in Tight Spaces. Give us your reason and your thumbs up or thumbs down.
Overall, very impressed with Fights in Tight Spaces. I thought it is one of the more polished, yet, as we've talked about, simplistic, from an aesthetic perspective, roguelike deck builders that we've come across. I feel like that is very easy. I think I learned something new every single time we go through a roguelike deck builder. And I think what I've learned here in one is by playing Fights in Tight Spaces is that you can overcomplicate and muddy the water in a game. And how easy is it? Maybe not easy, but this isn't a great example of what it looks like to not overcomplicate a game and make it really high quality. I loved the overall theme of Fights in Tight Spaces, the gameplay, the cutscenes, the differential in the different decks themselves, and the overall pathing on how you progress through your different runs. I thought it was very well done, and I loved that where the game was at the point where we've jumped in on it. Now, it may not have always been as great as it was when the game was released, and I think even with the DLC that Ian has come across and played, I think it seems like they've identified where they could have added some additional benefit or some additional content to the game, and they've put it in there, and hopefully we'll see another one in the future for it. It's one of my more favorite roguelike deck builders that we've done. I think it's up there for me to Slay the Spire, even though Slay the Spire overwhelmingly is a more complicated game and probably a more fleshed out, complex roguelike deck builder. On my from my perspective, they hold the same ranking in my standards for roguelike deck builders, and I still think that my top is Wild Frost. But I am very impressed by this game. If for nothing else, the dark mode. Dark mode looks awesome. I overall I will give it a thumbs up. I do plan on keeping this game around. It is one that there's not a whole lot of games I'm probably going to keep on my computer, like downloaded from Steam, like readily available to jump into, but this will be one of them. I don't think this is a game that I will jump in all the time. I think there's going to be phases across my day or my week, or times where I leave it alone for a while and I come back to it and I say, I get an itch and I really want to play some Fights in Tight Spaces. And I don't think it'll be a hard game to pick up, having been away for a while too, which is another benefit of the game. So with outside of some of the keystrokes, which I'll have to remind myself on. But yeah, overall, I give it a thumbs up. Really happy that we did this game. I would encourage everybody, if you're going to try this game out and you're not in a rush, just keep an eye out for a sale, because it is a little bit on the pricier side of the games that we've played. And when it's on sale, go grab it, try it out, see if you like it, and then from there, try to go grab the DLC content, because we've gotten some positive reviews from that too.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thumbs up from Gibby. DBN, how about you? Fights in Tight Spaces, is this a game that you're going to keep going back to on the Switch, or do you think this is one that maybe will get retired a little later this year?
I'll keep it brief. Thumbs up for sure for me. I think that was probably pretty clear over the last few weeks as I've been talking about it. But I also want to clarify that I do think I'm ready to elevate it to my favorite roguelike deck builder.
Okay.
I think I enjoy it more than Slay the Spire. I think I enjoy it more than Wild Frost. Which I don't know if I ever decided which one I preferred between those two. But I think Fights in Tight Spaces is number one now. And I think it just comes down to, when I think about the itch that I want to scratch with a roguelike deck builder, I don't actually think the deck building is as important to me as the gameplay. And I think that this game, while the deck building is there, it is not as much not as ever present as with Wild Frost or Slay the Spire in constantly upgrading, dumping old cards. Like, that's just not as important as mastering each individual turn. That is what's at the heart of Fights in Tight Spaces, is you need to be a master of each turn and the super unique circumstances that you found yourself in on that turn. And no turn in Fights in Tight Spaces feels the same as any other turn, which is not something you can say for Wild Frost or especially Slay the Spire, which have many times you're like, oh yeah, I do the same thing in every battle no matter what. Right? Because you have
run the
built your
same
deck
line of
to
cards.
run the same line of cards, the same
That's what your
thing.
decks do.
And so I can understand where Slay the Spire especially is this beautiful experience of building a deck that breaks the game, and Wild Frost to a lesser extent too. One thing you guys never brought up, and I never brought up either, was the idea of quote unquote breaking the game in Fights in Tight Spaces, because it does not want you to.
Yeah, you're well within its constraints.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
No, I'm sure that you can build a deck that crushes. I feel like I was there with that gun deck that I had put together in that one run. But I mean, never did I feel like I was overpowered, right? And that's something that Slay the Spire and Wild Frost wants you to do, is build a deck that makes you overpowered, right? And so I think for me, what I want to get out of a roguelike deck builder at the end of the day is the puzzle. I like the puzzle. And when the puzzle has not just a high level of challenge, but also a lot of options, and when the puzzle doesn't feel like it's the same puzzle every time, and lastly, when the puzzle adds an entire third dimension of space to move around and manipulate with a grid, that's hitting all the right notes for me. Now, sure, I do wish that there was a little bit more story. That's something I liked in both Wild Frost and Slay the Spire. But I have picked this game up throughout this month more than I think possibly any other game that we've reviewed, outside of maybe the month we did Gwent. and Pokemon probably are the two that rival it. But of all the roguelike deck builders, of all of the, of the many other games that we've liked, and even Duelist, we liked Duelist, right? But I did not boot it up as much as I booted up Fights in Tight Spaces. And the crazy thing is, it being on Switch is a perfect storm for me, where this is going to be, I think, my go-to time-killing game now. So huge. Honestly, last month I did double thumbs down. This month I'm going to go double thumbs up. See, all right, you see everybody who leaves reviews? I'm a positive person.
If you make a good game, double thumbs up. For me, this game is a thumbs up. This is definitely a game that I'm going to come back and play. I think this is a game that I think that you're right, DBN. The mobile, like the handheld gaming device for me was pretty clutch in this case. I think that was actually pretty important. When I sit down at my computer, I'm not so sure that this is the game that I'm going to boot up with a high level of like many times. However, this replaces very likely Slay the Spire for me when traveling. Because it's the game that I would play a lot on my phone, on the plane or whatever. If there's spotty Wi-Fi, play a couple of rounds of Slay the Spire. And I don't, as long as I can have the Steam Deck with me, I don't really see that happening again. Not when I could boot up Fights in Tight Spaces. And so it's a thumbs up for me in the fact that this is definitely a game that I'll go back to. Now, that being said, this does not erase for me other roguelike deck builders that we've covered. I think it actually doesn't erase anything, interestingly enough, right? Like for me, Slay the Spire doesn't erase Wild Frost because Slay the Spire is, Slay the Spire is mobile, or Wild Frost doesn't delete Slay the Spire for me because Slay the Spire is mobile. Wild Frost destroyed all other roguelike deck builders for me when it came to sitting down at my computer. I'm not going to boot up, certainly not going to boot up Hell Train or whatever that game is, Monster Train.
Monster Train,
yeah.
I would like to forget.
Yeah, there's a lot of games that I'm not booting up because I have Wild Frost, and that's a game that I will 100% continue to go to. That being said, when I'm on the Steam Deck now, I have Wild Frost and Fights in Tight Spaces both downloaded to it. And if I ever feel like I want to play a card game, it's going to be Fights in Tight Spaces. So it's this weird thing where I like all of them in kind of different spots. Like Slay the Spire, I like because I have it on my phone. It's quick and dirty. I don't have to be hyper concentrated. Fights in Tight Spaces, I freaking love on mobile. I love just like I love the mobility of it. I love being able to play it and like just zone in and zone everything else out with a pair of headphones on. Like I really like that. Wild Frost, I love sitting down at my PC to play and having it on the full screen and being able to take in all of the artwork in that game. And so I like them each for different reasons. I don't know that I can specifically say that I love one more than the other because they all sort of like itch my brain a little bit differently. And I like all of them. My only negative is that fact that like Fights in Tight Spaces is long. It is not short, and it is like taking a math test. I mean, it is not like super casual. I'm not just swinging up a bunch of like strikes and blocks with my index finger, right? Like I'm actually having to focus and be very intentional about each turn, each card, each movement, or else I'm dead. And so that's my only drawback, but it's not even really a drawback. Like it just speaks to how good this game actually is. And you're 100% right. This game does not ask you to break it. It actually confines you and then says, can you get powerful enough as the confines get worse and worse and worse as the game progresses, and we put up against harder and harder things, that you can become more strategic and better with your deck and your character as you play. Whereas other games are like, hey, we're going to eventually ramp up the difficulty that if you didn't break your deck, you're going to lose. And I don't feel like that's ever the case in this game. I feel like there's always a path to victory if you can figure it out. There's that puzzle element to it, and there's always something. Even if your deck isn't that great, there's a puzzle that you can crack that you can head to victory in almost every single fight. And I learned that a lot through the rewind button. Fights that I thought, wow, there's no way I could have won that. And I rewound it and tried it like 10 different ways and was like, actually, I could beat that. I didn't think there was any chance that I could beat that. And it just showed me. And I think that's one of the best parts of the rewind button. It's not the cheesing. It is learning that
It's a
you
valuable
don't
lesson.
see things. Yeah, you don't see things that you think you've come to conclusions in this game, and then you like hit the rewind button, try something a little bit different, and you're like, oh, I just suck. Oh, I actually just suck. I didn't realize that at the time, but I suck at this. And I think that is a really unique and fun part of this game. So big thumbs up for me too. This will be one that definitely gets booted back up for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say too, just as like a last bit of recommendation, if you are going to try this game, don't be, even if you're a card game veteran, don't be too hasty to jump past the rewind button option the
Use
first
it.
playthrough or two. It is actually something that I have playing in Classic and then whatever the thing after Classic is and got humbled. I was like, you know what? I had the one rewind in the next up one from Classic. It gives you a rewind back in exchange for making a few other things harder. And I looked at it, I was like, I actually missed this. And it's not even because, it makes the fight like easier, but because sometimes I'll finish a turn and be like, I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken the other tack that I thought of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
In
so
every hand, every position presents different tacks. It's not like
yeah.
there's a billion different paths. There's like so many different pathways you can take throughout the course of just one fight. I think that's great about it.
Fantastic game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we want to get ready to close down the show, but we're going to have a swift-ish conversation here about Legends of Runeterra. And the reason for that is if you've been, with us for a while, then you probably know that this was at one time a Legends of Runeterra podcast, and it hasn't been for quite some time now, a little over maybe like a year and 3 or 4 months. We haven't covered the game. We did a return to Runeterra earlier this year, and it's the only time I ever Masters, weirdly enough, and haven't touched it since. Super weird. But so there's a couple of things that happened, and we're going to talk about them. Riot put out something called Legends of Runeterra 2024 State of the Game and FAQ, and the first question that they answer is LOR dying. If that gives you an idea about the direction of this post, well, if it doesn't, it should.
If you had to ask the question, then you probably know the answer.
Yeah. So,
right.
Just so we're clear, so a couple things happened. One, Riot laid off a whole bunch of employees. They canned a bunch of their games that weren't sort of their flagship games of specifically Valorant and League of Legends. And they didn't can TFT either. They didn't do anything with TFT, but that's been like a weird side project that's just been profitable, I guess. LOR isn't canned. However, it is severely cut back, which means they cut the staff to the game. They're saying in this, it's never been profitable. They don't have a reason to think it's going to become profitable. One time they shifted and said, we're going to focus on PvE. And then they said, we're going to focus on PvP. And now they're saying, we're going to focus on PvE. And, but why they say we're going to focus on PvE, what they really mean is we have a team so small that we cannot possibly work on anything except the PvE mode. And we are no longer going to be developing new cards, new champions, or set releases in the way that we've done them historically, maybe not doing them at all. A lot of the World's Championship was canceled. Any tournaments, that sort of stuff is canned, and all of the stuff that you were looking at for the future, things like gauntlets and ranked season rewards and stuff, like we're not even gonna have that anymore. Like it's basically the equivalent of no longer being a trading card or a collectible card game. It is relegating itself into that PvE spot, and that's really the only place that they want to develop, or the only place that they can develop. There's tons of questions in here, a lot of stuff and responses that they've given. But basically, it's kind of and they ask like, why wasn't there more advertisement for it? Why isn't in the LOL client, the League client, that sort of thing? Some of the questions that we talked about on the show and some of the frustrations that we've had. In the end of the day, it's kind of like an I told you so moment for us here on the show, because we were all kind of feeling this, and we were all kind of wondering, how is it making money? How is it doing this with the cosmetics, all that sort of stuff? And they've been basically saying in this that like the cosmetics were so intense for them to produce that they weren't even making money on the cosmetics that they were producing. Like they weren't getting enough purchased because they just put so much time and energy into the cosmetics. Even at their high price point, they weren't making money on them. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about in this that we're not going to get too deeply into, but I want to open it up for conversation. When you guys took a look at this, kind of like what were your first thoughts obviously it's another card game dead. Thankfully, we're not podcasting about it as it's dying. Praise the Lord. We already moved on. I know they're trying to put like a spin on this. Like, we're not dead. We're just going to do something new. But when you take your card game and you say, we're not putting out any new cards for it, guess what that means? Technically, Tessel isn't dead either then yet, right? Like, technically, Tessel still exists. And Gibby, you don't have to miss it. You can go play it right now. But it's dead, and this game's dead. And so that's just a reality. They're saving face by keeping it on the servers and keeping a couple of guys pushing pencils around it. And that's about it, So I don't know. I'll open it up. I don't have anybody specific I'm gonna like pass to, but just anybody have any thoughts? What are your gut reactions and thoughts on all this?
I'll go first just because I think I'm going to have a little less to say about it than maybe Ian is. He tends to be rather insightful about this kind of stuff and have some kind of deeper points. I am, to your point, I'm very happy that we are no longer podcasting about Legends of Runeterra as it's kind of in this decline, so we didn't have to experience the game in, this is going to sound kind of like funeralish, but I'm glad we didn't have to experience the game in such a like an awful state. We kind of, it was declining for us personally, but the game wasn't in a bad spot when it kind of lost out of favor for us, per se. So I think they could have used a little bit better direction and charted a course and stayed with it all along. I don't think that that's any sort of secret or any expert advice, but we're now seeing the effects of what happens because they didn't do it. I was never that big of a fan of the PvE. That was never my part of the game that I really enjoyed. But that was always kind of the stance they took, was that majority of our player base loves the PvE content more than the PvP. And I personally think that the PvP side of things may have been the longevity of Legends of Runeterra if they had done a better job balancing the game. There were so many breaking points within the PvP side of the house during the releases when they were adding Bilgewater and Shurima and Targon and adding all these new champions and all these new like factions into the game, where we just kind of threw our hands in the air and said, this is so unbalanced. What are they doing? And they were so slow to react and in balancing the game that I just think that they never had a good chance of ever holding on to their player base. I enjoyed how easy it was to get cards, and I feel like I got the full experience of the game, but the full experience of the game becomes tainted when everybody else can do so as well and the game's not balanced. So I think there was some mismanagement in creating a livable and, I don't know, good environment for the player base at all times in PvP, and I think that's where they really would have benefited and seen the biggest boost in their numbers. But they no longer have that because they failed so miserably in that department that I think they have no choice but to turn to the PvE. It's kind of the way that I read it. I also think PvP is probably a lot more to manage than the PvE, and if with the downsizing of their teams, I think the PvE is a no-brainer to turn to if they're not going to just turn the screen off and let it go to black. So sad to see LOR go down this way. It was probably my favorite digital card game that I had played, especially because it's what got me in on this podcast as well. It's what I was playing as I became a host, and I've had a lot of good memories playing Legends of Runeterra, but RIP. On to the next.
DBN, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this article.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I feel like Gibby had such nice words about saying I was insightful and everything, and I come to this and I feel like it's not that I have nothing to say. I don't know what more I can say that I haven't said a million times, on this podcast when we were covering the game, and eventually when I, left the show for a while and let you guys run it individually, because I was so fed up with it. I mean, you know what stands out to me reading this that kind of made me mad was their sort of, I felt, and maybe I'm just extra sensitive to it, but I really felt like they had this haughty tone in this, like, well, we did all the things right and it just didn't work out, or well, this thing didn't proved, it's almost at times, and and I'm reading between the lines here a little bit, but it's almost like they're like, especially talking about cosmetics, it was almost like a you community didn't buy them. Now, of course, they didn't exactly say it, right? But like,
we did everything we could.
We did everything we could. We did, and that's like, I'm sure some of the individual people on the team feel that way, and it's probably true. But Riot as an organization set LOR up to fail and then was repeatedly humbled time and time again and never changed course, never learned from it. The entire management of LOR from their hot start to their whimpering dying breaths has been just filled with irrepressible ego. And I don't want to say, and I really do feel for, some of our friends and some of the, folks that were still making content around this game and still supporting that, because I know exactly how they feel. Mark and I having been through this before with Tessel, myself having to, quit content creation as a paid career. It's not like it, and I'm glad I did. I'm happy with where I am now, but I mean, I was making money off of it and hoping to, with Tessel, potentially scale and get bigger, and I had to quit because not only was it barely paying the bills, but when the game dies, rebuilding a new audience from scratch for a new game feels incredibly daunting, and props to the people that I've seen who did it from our community, from the Tesla community. But and sucks to see that some of those people and some others that we grew to enjoy, that we had not met otherwise in the Tesla community, that they're going to be going through this again. And sympathy, for sure, to those people and to the Riot folks that, potentially lost their jobs or whatever along all this. But I say all that so that I can now, with those disclaimers in mind, say, not gonna lie, kind of glad it's dead. Like, I actually am so, frankly, I'm a bit resentful towards it. I'm resentful to the fact that we reached out 1 million times when we were covering it on a weekly basis. We reached out 1 million times to the devs trying to get someone on the show, and they were on every other show but ours. I'm resentful to the fact that, they perpetually mismanaged it. They hardly ever balanced it appropriately. And they took what was a great shell of a game, and again, through sort of a stroke of ego, perpetually overcomplicated it to the point where it lost the elegance that made it so appealing in the first set in the Bilgewater expansion. Frankly, I'm just resentful of the fact that all the way down to the bitter end, they still are in this thing claiming they did everything they could. When the entire community screamed from high heavens and Reddit, that
mostly from the high mountain of Reddit,
mostly from the Targon's high peak, of Reddit, all the ways that they can improve the things. And at the end of the day, man, I'm not saying everything that's on Reddit is true, but enough people in the community with an intimate knowledge of their game, their community, was telling them what they needed to do, and they never, ever listened.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I do not say RIP, okay? Because I want this to be a humbling learning experience for the people at Riot, because they need to get their act together. And I also want this to live on in infamy, if possible, to other card game developers as a perfect representation of what not to do. Because as much, Mark, if you recall our Tessel days, I know we're throwing Tessel around, Elder Scrolls Legends. If you recall those days, we had so many criticisms of the way that things were being managed. But at the end of the day, there was also a lot of things that they did do right. The devs
communicated
they
pretty
communicated.
consistently.
CVH, the community manager, was a legend. You know,
Yeah, he's on
came
the
on
show
our
multiple
show,
times. Yeah.
did everything in his power because he was a former fan of the game. He played the game. He created content for it. He casted games, right? And
Yeah,
they
he's a
brought him
streamer
in,
before they brought him on. Yeah.
right? And so while it wasn't perfect, I can say, that while I wish things would have been different for them, they tried. And everything about LOR, I just can't think of a single thing the devs did that was a genuine reaction to what the community wanted, and not a, do you remember the Aurelia, the first round of Aurelia nerfs where they barely nerfed it?
Yeah.
And then said, "We know better than you about balancing." They literally said something along the lines to the community letter, like, "You guys don't know what you're talking about. It's not that bad."
This play style is good. This play style is good, and you guys are just complaining.
Literally, that's what was being said. And like these, so like, I spit on the grave of LOR, to be particularly dramatic, because I wish it hadn't wasted so much of my time.
For me, when I think about LOR in its infancy, when I think about the first time I logged into the closed beta and booted up Zed Hecarim, when I think about the release of Bilgewater and getting my hands on TF and Gangplank for the first time, and the community in Discord being excited about the weekly vault and sharing what we got in the weekly vault, and there being like a whole thing, like every Tuesday afternoon, like, "Oh, go open your vault, let's share what we got." And it was like, it was as close to feeling like, man, we were cracking packs every week as I had experienced in a really long time in a digital card game. Like, the community came together around that. And there were some moments in LOR like that where our podcast was growing, where the community was growing, we were getting the league going, and it was really at a pretty sweet spot. And I am upset that the purity of what that was got really disrupted, and we were just never able to get back to it. And I'm sure there's a plethora of reasons as to why that is, but I have to think that at least a portion of it is two things. I remember very early on when we had a interview with Silverfuse on the show, and off air, she said, "I'm going to LOR, but honestly, I'm really nervous about it. Every person that Riot hired to make this game has never made a card game before." And I remember, I've never forgotten that conversation with her. And it was like, yep, that actually makes sense. It almost felt like it was the league model shoved down my throat from beginning to end. In so many ways, LOR felt like a different game with a card game skin, right? Like, it never really had the feeling, or at least after Bilge, it never really had the heartbeat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it ever did. I think it ever really had the heartbeat of a card game, where it really genuinely felt like a community coming around the card game in a I don't know, like, card game has a unique draw of player base. It has a unique feel when you're in the community. It has a unique feel when you're in the client, and it had all of the polish and all of the money and all of the art and all of the lore and all of the things. But it was like the way in which Riot itself and the people who made the game interacted with the community, and the way we got to know them, it goes to show, like, man, I freaking love Ben Brode still.
Yeah.
And I don't love Hearthstone. And I don't play Snap. And I love it still. And I love CVH. And Elder Scrolls isn't even around. And it was like, I don't know a soul. I don't know a soul who works on this game. I don't have a voice for them. I don't have a face for them. I still don't really ever feel like I connected with it. And I could rant for a while. I think maybe one of the things that for me that was most punishing and difficult for this, one of the questions, does this mean the game will be monetized more moving forward? And they said, to be frank, yes. Like, we're doing nothing with the game. We're killing it, and we're going to monetize it more? Like, what? Yes, our team is very openly smaller, and we'll have more packages and monetizations open for Path of Champions. on many different levels. We want the game to grow and do more cool things with Legends of Runeterra. Are you kidding me? No, you don't. But we will need to be self-sufficient and be able to, responsibly pay for those cool things. And while it's almost like Riot corporately has come down to the team and been like, listen, guys, your allowance is up. Like, get out of our freaking house. Like, you're not living in the basement anymore. Get out of the house. And if you guys can't make it on your own out there and get your own apartment, then just a heads up, like, we're not bailing you out and paying your rent. And, it almost feels like the dev comments in this almost kind of feel like the arrogant 22-year-old or 23-year-old that doesn't want to leave their parents' house, and they're getting kicked out. Everyone knows they got kicked out. And they're like, well, yeah, but we still got this. Like, oh, it'll be fine. Like, our parents are idiots, man. And I know they're not saying that about Riot corporately. They've said sort of like very politically nice things about them inside of this article. But in some cases, you're right, DB, and it's almost like I read this thing and it's like, man, it still doesn't really feel like you learned your lesson.
Yo, it's unbridled ego. It's out of control. I mean, you can just tell from the way they wrote this, even through the corporate jargon. You're just like, they don't. It's like the criminal who doesn't have remorse, for his crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's always felt with this team. And I just want to say too, I think, Mark, you actually perfectly crystallized it for me. And, I don't want to go too much more into it because we've already ranted about it enough, but, you perfectly crystallized why I'm so resentful, I think. And I hadn't really even connected these two things, but when it was in those early days and when the community was building and, I think about, all these, interactions we have with key members of our community now, the people that we, are the closest to. And, I'm thinking Jeff, Curry, right? Who now is making content on our YouTube channel,
Payne.
for God's sake. Payne.
Yeah.
Yes.
Six Summit. Yeah.
Six Summit. All these people that have been so near and dear to our hearts, and many more that, sorry, I don't have a perfect memory of all of you in our Discord. There's a lot of you, right? But all of these people, like, those were the hashtag good times, the glory days, right? And they were so beautiful and yet so short-lived because of the perpetual blundering of this team and their inability to take something as simple as, a framework for a card game that, let's be honest, the first set was not complicated. Okay? But it was elegant. One thing I've talked about with people with Disney Lorcana, I was talking to a bunch of Pokemon players, like, is it any good? Like, how is it compared to Pokemon? Like, Pokemon is significantly, harder and more complicated, but Lorcana's more elegant. And I felt that is how LOR started, and with every set and every new card release and every new balance adjustment, they forgot at the root that the game doesn't need to be complicated to be good, right? It just needs to be balanced. It needs to have the ability for people to build decks. And to the point where, by the way, one of my main complaints was this whole thing of they would release these packages, right? Here's a new champion, and all the cards are supposed to go with the champion. They had the ego to say, we know how to build a deck better than you, so we're just going to build it for you. That was their card design philosophy of, we know what decks we want in our game, so screw you. Here's the middle finger. We're going to give you the decks that we want you to build, and without any amount of leeway for you to be able to adapt it to your own and to make it your own. It is ours. This is our game. You're going to play it on our terms. So, advisory warning, but screw them, right? And that's not what I mean. I mean the other one, right? Like, it's
Well, listen, the good news is the last time we ever have to talk about it on this show.
Yes.
Amen.
This will be a
Amen to
speech
that.
embargo. The game that shall not be named.
the game that shall not be named.
Shall not be named. Yes, my tears are in the the spring that I used to play all the time.
You lost
for
the
TK
thing that
Rocket.
healed.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, TK
The
Soraka,
landmark.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
the landmark that
yeah.
healed every round. Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. Yeah.
That was Gibby's
Yes.
bread and butter. He was really good.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, listen, guys. Obviously, we have some feelings around the end of
Trauma,
LOR.
even.
Some trauma,
Star
some
Spring.
feelings, some like distant, fond memories that are just then shoot up and spit out and regurgitated over and over again in our hearts.
That's right.
All of the blackness of our souls here in LOR with the game. In the end of the day, you know, it was a game we wished was great, and it didn't end up that way. And now it's a game that we don't play. And there's always going to be games like that. But we are now doing something really cool. We're on the kick of exploring new games.
Mark's trying to cool me off.
No, I'm just saying I'm transitioning. I'm transitioning to the end of this show because we have to announce where we're going next, and we haven't done that yet. And so in the closing of the episode, listen, the good news is we're not playing LOR next month. The great news is we're going to play a new game next month, and we're going to talk about a new game next month, which is super exciting. Now, just a caveat, next week, there's going to be probably some content that comes out on the feed between DBN and Gibby, or Ian and Gibby, that's going to be talking about Lorcana and Into the Inklands, because they want to give an episode just dedicated to giving you an update on that, once again, convincing you to get into Lorcana. And then after that, we're going to spend 3 weeks talking about Fantasy Flight's new card game, Star Wars Unlimited. It is going to pre-release when you listen to this episode. The day this episode comes out, it's going to pre-release on March 8th. You can get it in stores. It should be easier to get.
Card game.
Physical card game.
Yeah.
You can play it on Tabletop Simulator. So if you have Tabletop Sim, there is someone who's made a full version with every single card, deck building, grid snaps, like it snaps to the grid and everything. It looks really nice. So if you want to check out the game on Tabletop Sim before you start picking up physical copies, you can certainly do that.
Do it.
So yeah, if you have Tabletop Sim, you can kind of play along with us without it. Yeah,
do it. Play the game. Do it.
All of the Star Wars references that we're going to be able to pull out over the next couple of weeks. So we're really pumped for that. We're hoping to have a special guest on for that as well. We're excited for that.
Your deck child, do it.
Do it. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about that over the next couple of weeks. I couldn't be more pumped, of course. I'm super excited about it because this is the card game I've been waiting for a while, and my wife is regretting that I have been. She literally sent me a text the other day with the list of charges from places. She's like, what are these? Cards.
And you respond and you say, now this is card gaming.
This is card gaming.
They're cards. I'm sorry, honey. But that's going to wrap up this episode, guys. We're really excited for what's coming next, and we're super pumped to be covering Star Wars Unlimited. Go check it out at your local game store. Go watch some stuff online, and specifically come and watch on YouTube, because when this episode comes out, there's going to already be some YouTube content coming out for Star Wars Unlimited. If you want to learn the basics of the game, I have a long video coming out on the basics of the game, the basics rules, how combat works. I compare it to a whole bunch of different games, how to like the untap step works. I compare it to different games, how deck building works, and we explore that a little bit. I get into all of that in the first video that we're going to drop on the YouTube, and it's out now. So go and check it out and figure out if this is a game that you might want to explore. I think the deck building in and of itself is super intriguing and really fun. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. This is it. Goodbye to Fights in Tight Spaces. We're on to new things. Feeling good? Feeling good?
So long. Farewell, dark mode.
Oh my gosh. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you back here for the next one.
Suck it, LOR.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Starter Set. You have no idea how much we appreciate you. If you stuck with us through thick and thin over the last 5 years, we just deeply, deeply appreciate you. And we especially appreciate all of our patrons over on our Patreon page. If you're not one yet, you should consider signing up. Toss us a nickel or a dime or $1 a month. It helps keep this thing rolling, encourages us to continue recording and making content. And it's helping us make all kinds of content over on the YouTube as well. So go join the Patreon club over there and then come and join us in Discord afterwards. Thanks for listening to this episode, guys. It was a real lot of fun to record, and we're looking forward to moving on next into Star Wars Unlimited. Hope you're looking forward to it too. Hey, welcome back.
Just makes me think of Fat Albert.
It is.
Just every time Mark intros, it's the
welcome back to the post show. We're doing a little conversation around what we cracked this week because we each cracked some physical packs this week. So that was pretty exciting stuff. We just wanted to talk a little bit about it. We talked about some of the stuff and Gibby's plight with the botched boxes and things that we talked about earlier. And also somehow his bad luck and luck simultaneously. I don't need the perfect merging of those two things together. We're going to get into. But I'm going to Gibby, you want to go first? You want to tell us about what you pulled and what what are you most excited about that you pulled over the weekend for Lorcana?
Yeah, you better be careful how many packs you pull, or else you're gonna be sleeping in your pod racer.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
But yeah, I had a lot of great. You know what? It's interesting. I've got this weird feeling right now about what happened over the weekend. I enjoy so much the community that I have at the. And I didn't get to shout them out. The Greater Memphis Magic Arena. That's the local game shop that I play at in Memphis, and the community there is fantastic. Love so many people at that community.
My shop can beat up your shop.
No, my shop. Memphis is a tough city, bro.
My shop will beat up your shop.
We throw hands. Love the shop, and I still enjoy playing in person so much. But I feel like this weird apprehension about playing online and having my collection right now, because I pulled so few of those legendaries, and in Inklands it feels so critical to have some of those legendary cards if you're really going to try to make the best deck that you can, even if it is a rather creative one. So I'm at this weird place where there's 60 cards in a Lorcana deck. I have got in person maybe 52 to 55 of a bunch of different decks, but I almost certainly do not have 60 of any single deck because I'm missing those legendaries, and it's frustrating. We've only had the game for this Inklands for a week. I get it, and there's nothing wrong with playing a deck that was previous in an earlier meta and tweaking it just a little bit, where some of the more expensive or high cost stuff is from a previous set. But you just want to get your hands on the new stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say you did crack some cool stuff, right?
Oh yeah. So I got an enchanted. I've got a lot of the super rares and pretty much from there. The only two legendaries I pulled were not in the boxes that I bought, but in the random packs that I played with in the events that I played. I've got one Jim Hawkins and one Grandma Tala. But the three enchanteds I pulled the Sorcerer's Hat, the Pride Lands, Pride Rock, which Ian and I both agreed is actually the one enchanted art that isn't better than the regular art.
Oh no.
Not that matters. And then the Peter Pan enchanted as well. All three of those pictures you can find on our Discord, because I think I posted all three of them in our Lorcana chat. But all great cards. I had already built a half a dozen decks, so now it's actually putting cards in sleeves for the decks that I built.
Even when he's unlucky, he still is lucky. So even when his boxes aren't pulling the cards he needs to play, he's pulling cardboard gold that he can sell.
Yes.
Well, I'm just appreciative of the fact, even though you got the dud boxes, that you should be able to sell the dream cards or whatever, the enchanted
He's basically
cards.
got $300 to $500 worth of funny money he can spend.
Yeah,
on
they're probably
cards.
They'll probably each go for anywhere between, if I sell them relatively soon, they'll probably each go for anywhere between 80 to 115. They're not on the higher end of some of the enchanteds right now, and I don't know if prices are going to go up or down on the enchanteds, but I'm okay with selling them with where they're at right now.
Let's find out.
So yeah, I have them all listed online.
Which is your favorite? What was your favorite thing that you cracked over the weekend?
It was probably the Pride Lands one, because it was in the first pack of the first box that I opened. So that was just really, really funny. And there was a dozen people watching me open that pack too, all around in our store. But I know, you know what, I will say it was the legendary Grandma Tala, because the Grandma Tala is what I used in that event to when I went 4-0 and won that event this past weekend. That is the card that I had in my deck that was kind of like a surprise that no one saw coming, because I pulled it from a random pack, and I played it well.
Nice.
It definitely won me some games outright, which was fun.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I'll break from Lorcana and we'll insert Star Wars between two Lorcana sections of the post-show banter. I got 6 packs, so not many, just got my hands on 6 for Star Wars Unlimited. Now, something that's interesting is that, so you have all the normal cards, you have common, uncommon, rare, legendary. You then have any one of them can be in your hollow slot. So you have 16 cards in your deck. Every pack, which is a lot, every pack comes with a base and a leader, and that leader could be a rare. There is 2 rare leaders of each faction of all 4 factions. There's 8 rare leaders. Then you have a bunch of common slots, a couple of uncommon, 3 uncommon slots. You have a rare slot and a hollow slot. And that hollow slot could be a rare or a legendary, and your rare slot could also be a legendary. So I cracked in those 6 packs a couple of legendaries. Then in addition to that, all of your cards can be hyperspace, which gets rid of the border. Every single card. And so it gets rid of the border. Every
That's what
single
I want
card
on all my cards.
they're nice. Some of them are nice, some of them not as nice, but every single one, I think, except for R2D2, C3PO, I Am Your Father, and there's one other that is exclusive to, maybe it's Admiral Veers. There's one other, no, it's Admiral Moti, that are unique to the starter decks, and you can only get them by getting the 2-player starter kit. And you get a full copy, 3 copies of each of them in the starter kit. So you get a full playset of them if you pick up the starter kit. Those do not have borderless variants. Everything else can be a borderless. And there are frame break. And statistically, there are there's 2 borderless in every 3 packs. And so they come up pretty often. You can get borderless pretty often. So all of that to say, I cracked open a bunch of packs. One that I really liked that I got Fett's Fire Spray. So I got Slave 1, which was freaking dope. It's really cool looking card.
Nice.
Probably one of the better artworks. I got a holographic borderless 7th Fleet Defender, which is like it's a ship. It's a TIE fighter with 3 wings, 6 wings, but it's like 3 kind of.
Yeah, one of the TIE Defenders that they had that whole plot point in Rebels.
Yes, but it's all hyperspace, so it's art clear to the sides, and it's full hollow, so it's hollow clear to the edge.
Beautiful.
And it looks freaking gorgeous. And then, but my big crack, the one I was most excited for, it's not holographic, but I picked up a hyperspace borderless Millennium Falcon in one of them, which is really nice.
And you send me a picture
dope.
of that.
I will send you a picture of it. That's probably the one I was most excited for. I think it's cool that you can get now the big chases in this is the showcase versions of the leaders. So each pack has a chance to open up a showcase leader, which is an alt art, unique holo treatment, full art, no border leader, front and back. And there's one showcase for each of the, I don't know, however many it is, 5, 10, 15, 18 leaders in the game or something like that. And maybe, I don't think you can get one for Vader or Luke, because those are unique to the starter kits as well, or the pre-release box. So you can't get them for those 2. But they are 1 in every 12 boxes of cards. They're pretty rare. So, hey, I'm hoping that the one box that I have coming will have one of them in it, because they're probably worth a good bit of money. I can probably flip it and buy 2 more boxes.
I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. I had the cards right next to me in cases, so I'm just going to hold them up for those of you that are watching on YouTube in case you wanted to see what they look like. So there's Pride Lands.
There you go.
Full art.
Okay.
And then you've got and it's turned sideways because that's the new thing they added in Inklands is locations, which I even had somebody in my local community call out and listen to an old episode of ours and goes, "Wow, that guy! How did he know?" He's talking about DBN. He's like, "How did he know that they were going to add locations to the game?" Because he said that back in like the first set.
I did predict that.
Then there's
I guess
the Peter Pan. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a good nice little art there. And then the Sorcerer's hat.
Yeah, they're all impressionist style painting.
They're like
inspired.
oil.
to go with like Scrooge
Manor.
McDuck's
Yeah,
manor
the
and
oil
all the
painting.
paintings on his wall is the inspiration. Kind of cool.
So DBN, what did you crack?
Yeah. So obviously we went to the event. So two different events. The one that I ran, I actually did buy. The way that we did it is we did a starter deck, which comes with a pack, and then 3 extra packs on top of that. And you build it. You needed to build a 60 card deck, rainbow coloring, so you could play any cards you want. So you didn't have to limit yourself to a 2-color limit, which I felt was great. And we saw a lot of diversity in what people played, which was exactly what I wanted. I also, even though I was running everything, I didn't play round 1, but during the break of round 1 or during the match, while other people were playing their first round, I built a deck as well, following those same rules myself. And then because we had an odd number of players, I would play whoever had the bye for the next 3 rounds, which was just super fun.
Yeah, like low risk, just fun. Just
yeah, I mean, and every time they came over and played me, I just gave them a promo card and said, "Hey, you got a free win, but you want to play me instead? All right, great." And then I had to step away and occasionally make rulings on things. But my scene is, even though there's a lot of kids, most of the people know the rules pretty well, so it was a good time. But anyways, pulled not 1 but 2 legendaries from that starter deck in 4 packs. So pulled, unfortunately, the 2 that I pulled are 2 of the worst ones, which is Mickey Trumpeter and the Lucky Dime. But that's okay. Hey, 2 legendaries in 4 packs, not bad, right? And then turned around and got I bought a box and Lindsay bought a box, and then we went home afterwards and we cracked the boxes. And I pulled an Enchanted, which is the Scrooge McDuck, which I immediately turned around and listed, and 2 days later sold for $165. So it's gone up about $5 since then, but seems to be stabilizing right there. So I'm like, hey, I'm happy with that, because I think it'll go down from here in the next few weeks. So flipped it pretty quick, and gonna be raking in the Scrooge McDuckian piles of money, which I'm very very thrilled, because similar to Gibby, no, we definitely pulled more legendaries than Gibby, but we kind of pulled like not a lot of duplicates, and so kind of hard to build a new deck with that, right? So we pulled 2 Jafar Striking Illusionists, which was great. We pulled 1 Ursula legendary, 2 Kitas, 1 what is it? Gibby, the Robin Hood, that's what it is. And we pulled but a lot of one-ofs and things. And then we purchased a few more, like 3 or 4 more packs on Sunday when we went back for regular league. And I pulled another Mickey Trumpeter, and a Grammatala. So again, all over the place. But I went into a local shop, and I recommend you guys, well, Gibby, maybe you can do that too. And we went into a shop that puts their singles in a case, and actually Lindsay was in there. We went in there on Saturday, and we picked up a couple cards that they had that seemed like good prices, including some Jim Hawkins, which we pulled none of. And then went back today. Lindsay went there on her way back from work, and they had more Jim Hawkins and a Robin Hood, all like way under TCG player market value. And so we like literally just snatched them all up, which is, I'd say, great, but it was a lot of money, but it was a good deal. And the problem that I'm having is like, and what Gibby's probably experiencing is, the new cards are really strong. And I don't want to call power creep too soon, because a lot of the old cards are also really strong, but it's one of those things where it's like you include the same 50 cards from the old set, but if you run the last 10 cards where the new stuff is a clear upgrade, you're just playing with a hand tied behind your back. So it's
ideally you
need those new things. So. But hey, that's how these games go. We'll just keep chasing the legendaries. Gibby, you and I can talk, and maybe we can ship each other some things we're
piglets.
missing.
There you go.
Oh wow, we have 1.
That is a lot.
a
He's
lot
a
of
pirate
piglets.
captain.
But anyways,
He's a
he's a pirate captain.
He's a
Yeah,
pirate captain.
Poo pirate captain. Yes, poo poo pirates.
Listen, you guys keep your piglet poo poo pirate. I'll get my my canon Jarrus. Okay, that's
all right. Seems fair. Piglet and Jedi
Absolutely.
are totally the same. But both owned by Disney. So
as it turns out, it is. And
comes
I'm going
full
to be
circle.
in Disney like this week, so I'll be in Orlando starting on Saturday for a conference. So I will be in Disney Springs, and I'm going to look and see if they have either A, Lorcana, or B, if they have Star Wars Unlimited on the shelf already.
Very nice.
If they do, I might pick up some Star Wars Unlimited or something while I'm there, because I know for a while Lorcana Set 1, like the only place to get Lorcana was like in Disney Springs or downtown Disney.
Yeah,
so
Lorcana first chapter is basically non-existent on shelves anymore.
Yeah, they'll read the prints.
You just can't find it. The reprint's gone now too.
Wow.
Lots of chasers and that, so everybody snatched it up.
Yeah, I bet. Should probably look through my stuff because they're just sitting on my shelf.
Yeah, I know you have a legendary Elsa. You need to send one of us.
I do have a legendary Elsa. How much is legendary Elsa?
At least
$25.
Oh wow.
I got 3. You can send it to Ian.
Okay. Yeah, I got to get rid of my cards. Oh, you got 3. Okay. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. There you go.
I have them sitting down here. They're just chilling in a box downstairs.
Yeah. They should be chilling in my box.
In my hand when I pull them. Your house in the cup that I make.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate you guys tuning in and also sticking around for the banter and hearing about the cards that we cracked. So hopefully you're cracking some stuff on your own that you're enjoying. Maybe crack-a-lacking or crackling or crack.
You
I
can
don't
move
know.
on.
Banter over.
Yeah, and we're done.